So now we'll talk about the scenario context in SpecFlow. So what is in the scenario context? The scenario context is mainly useful for data sharing purpose. Let's say you want to share your data from one step to another step in the scenario. So in that case, the scenario context is useful. In SpecFlow, scenario context is a class that provides a way to share the data between the steps of the scenario during its execution. It acts like a container to store and retrieve values within the context of a single scenario and data sharing purpose. So scenario context allow you to pass the data between the steps of scenario. So this is particularly useful for sharing state or information that needs to be carried across multiple steps within the same scenario. If you want to share the data between the steps, you must use the scenario context. And accessing the data. So how do we access the data? Basically, there are a couple of methods are there in the scenario context. That you can use that. You can add, retrieve, and remove data from scenario context. That means there are three different mechanisms. One is adding the data, retrieving the data, and removing the data. So if you want to add the data to the scenario context, you can use dot add. And if you want to retrieve the data from the scenario context, you have to use the dot get. And if you want to remove the data from the scenario context, you can use the dot remove method. These are the three different methods that we are using for scenario context to access the data. There are mainly two ways to pass the, so one is there are two ways to use this scenario context in SpecFlow. One is passing scenario context as a parameter. So if you look at this, we have the scenario context at the method level. You see that public void some method scenario context, and we are using the scenario context object here. And inside that method, we are we are getting the values. String username is equal to scenario context dot get string of username. So like this, we can get the values from the scenario context. So one is the scenario. So we'll see that example with a real example later. And second one is accessing the scenario context through a global context. So that means we are going to create a separate class for the scenario context manager. We see that public static class scenario context manager. So inside the scenario context manager, we are creating an object for the scenario context, and then we have the set scenario context and get scenario context. There are two different methods. One is the set scenario context and the get scenario context. In the set scenario context, we have the scenario context object, and then we are adding. We are assigning to the current object. Current method object underscore scenario context. This one to this one, and finally we are getting that underscore scenario context by using get scenario context. Okay, we'll see how we are using in the real time later. And how exactly, after implementing the scenario context manager, okay, this is a global level context. Global level is nothing but if you want to pass the test data or data from one feature file to another feature file, or maybe one scenario to another scenario. So like that, that's the reason in that case we are using the global context. If you want to pass the data from one class file to another class file, or maybe one scenario to another scenario, or maybe one feature file to another feature file. Example, you have a login steps. Okay. In the login step, we have a method called as I enter valid credentials. So here we have two variables, two different data. One is a username and password. Okay. Here where scenario context is equal to scenario context dot current. So in the scenario context dot add method, we are adding the values to the scenario context. So this is my key basically. This is a key and this is the value. Double quotations, username, and username is this one. So this is the username and this is the value coming here. So that means we are setting this scenario context here. We are adding the values to the scenario context. And scenario context dot add password and password. And after that, what we are doing, we are calling, we are setting these values at the global level, right? So in that case, scenario context manager dot set scenario context of scenario context, this object. And after doing this practice, if you want to pass this data to another class, so this is some other class, right? This is some other class. In the some other class, I'm using what I'm trying to do. I want to get the data, that username and password. I need it. Okay, that is a different class, and this is a different class. So I want to use that. In that case, so I'm retrieving the scenario context from the global context. So where scenario context, we are getting an object for the scenario context manager dot get scenario context. So we are getting that scenario context. And after that, we are just creating an object for the, both username and password. We are setting the values. string username is equal to scenario context dot get string of username. Example, if you're getting the string value from this username perspective, then you can use a string. Example, if you're trying to get the number here, you can say int. That means integer. So if you're getting some decimal values, okay, like 20.5, then in that case you can use decimal here. If you're getting some boolean value here, true or false, you can use boolean here. Okay, so it is a depends on your different data type that you're using, that you're getting the data from the scenario. So now we'll see this practically how it's going to be. So now I'm going to create another project. So let me create a new project here. So that is a straight away SpecFlow. This is scenario context. Scenario context uh, project is created. So remove this calculator feature file. Right. So now what I'll do, I'm going to create two different feature files. One is register, and another one is a login. Okay. There is a feature file. So first one is a register dot feature. And the second one is login dot feature. All right. So let me go and implement one scenario at least here. So forget about this and remove these tags. And this is successful registration. Okay. And I'm writing straight away user navigate to site URL and user click on register link and then verify register page title. So this one I'm going to add. Let me open the application here. So click on the register link. Then we have to add this title. Copy this title. Go back and paste it. What next? This is the registration scenario, and let me go to the login scenario here. This is going to be so now we'll try to generate the snippet for each feature file. So let me go to the registration and right click on this one, define steps. So we are getting this kind of message, right? So warning message, all steps have been defined in this file already. Just close this and try to restart your Visual Studio, or else you can rebuild this, clean and rebuild it. So once you're done, so you should be able to see this kind of color, purple color, and then come back here, check once, yes. Now you can define. So we are getting this right. So make sure you have to check your class name. So register step definitions. This is fine for me. I'm going to create it. It's created. All good. And then I'll go back to login and few steps already common in both feature files. Right click, define steps, login step definition is fine. Cool. All good, right? So in between, I'm going to create one more class that is called a base class. This is a simple base class for my Selenium purpose and driver purpose. This is called as a base.cs. So I'm going to make it as a public. So now we are going to implement it for the Selenium automation testing, right? So I'm not going to use for normal purpose. I'm going to use for only Selenium purpose. So in that case, I need Selenium libraries. So that if you want Selenium library, you have to go to the manage nugget packages and just type Selenium here. Install this Selenium WebDriver. And you want to automate on Chrome driver. So in Chrome browser, you can select the Chrome driver, install it. I know I'm a bit very fast, so you can just adjust your video timings and we can watch it. All right, so I'm done, I think. So let me go to the base class first. Okay, so I'll do one thing: public static iWebDriver driver. So this is my public WebDriver, driver object. Okay, so go to my login steps. So this one should be imported. Extend by the base class. This also should be same thing because I'm making this driver instance common for both classes. Okay, both classes, both testing. So inside the test, you see that these are the predefined code. You can remove this. I remove it. Empty. Go to the login. Control H. Replace all. Done. It's gone. Now what next? The next thing is go to the first registration first. Okay. Go to the registration and we'll come from here. Given user navigation to site URL. All right. So here we can say driver is equal to new Chrome drive. And then driver.get, right? So driver.get method. I'm sorry, driver.navigate dot go to URL. Navigate dot can simply cut this one. Go to the base class. So here you can create public void. This is a setup method. Can paste you. So the same method you can copy here and paste it. When you use it, click on the register link. So in that case, driver dot find element by dot. So by dot. So by first of all, you have to import that OpenQA.Selenium. Okay, dot example link text. Okay, I'm going to click on the link, right? So I'm taking the register dot click. So if you see this, this is the registration link, right? This is the register link. You can just simply click on by link text. Right. What next? If you want to get the title, right? So we have to get the title. So for that, driver dot get title, simple. Driver dot title, because in C# we have only title is there. I'm sorry, only title. So this see how to store in the string variable. This is the actual title from the application. This is your expected title. And you need to assert it. So in that case, you can use NUnit assets. Asset. You can take NUnit assets dot r equals. All right. Next one, the first name, right? So we are setting the first name. Driver dot find element. Okay, by dot. So go back, click on this one, first name property. You can take the first name property. Where is that? Yes, ID is equal to first name. So this one I can take it as, and this is going to be send case. Send case. This is Kurika. Right. So first I'm going to implement a normal steps one by one. Let me copy paste. So copy paste everything here. Right. And what next? Last name. This is the F name. And this is the L name. And this is going to be email. Email. And then password. Password. This is going to be pass. And next, confirm password. All right. And then click on the register button. So I'll copy this thing, paste here. This is going to be the law register link. Value is equal to register, name is equal to register iPhone button. We have to click on this button. Dot click. All right. So then successful message. Let me do one thing. Take the property of this successful message. So this is called class is called register. So we can take it driver dot find element by dot class name dot text of this. So this one should be stored in the string variable string text. And I want to verify this with what I set to dot or equals here. I'm using the text with my result. The result is this one. All right, fine. Now click on the logout link. So take the property of logout link, or you can simply logout option. Yes, ICV logout. Class name is called ICV logout. And driver dot find element by dot class name. Click. Then we have to close the browser. So driver dot close it. All right. So this one also I'm going to make it as a common method in the base class. Public void. You can say tear down. Tear down is nothing but browser closing. Simple. I'm going to copy this and paste here. All good. And what next? So are we going to implement this login also? So we'll do that. We'll implement the login as well. And after that, we'll jump onto the scenario context. So let me copy the code and paste over here. So now my login test also is ready. So I'm just clicking on the login link. and verifying the title. Then we are entering some username and password here, but I'm not entering any real values here. And then click on the login button. Okay, so let's go back and implement the scenario context here. How exactly? So what is the purpose of implementing the scenario context here? Because I don't want to pass another email and password, because I just want to register. First, I want to register with some data. The same data, the username, I mean, that is the email address and password, I'm going to use in the login also. With existing credential, which was already registered. So these same credentials, I'm going to use it. Once it is registered, this with the same credentials, it is going to be login. So we'll see that. So as we discussed, now we are going to create another one more class that is called Scenario Context Manager, right? So we have to copy paste that class here. Right click. I'm going to create a new folder here that is called Scenario Context Manager. So inside this, I'm going to create a new class that is called Scenario Context Manager. Scenario Context Manage.cs. So here, I'm going to copy paste that class to save the time. Yes. So this is a scenario context object, and then we are creating two different methods, that is the set scenario context and get scenario context. Okay, right. So the next one, how exactly I'm going to use this? So first we'll go back to, this is a global scenario context, right? It's a global scenario context level. Global scenario context. Now let's go back to the registration step definitions. So wherever you're using the values, okay, here I'm using the first name and last name, email address, and the password. But what are the different type of data which I need? I need only email address and password. If you want to have, I mean, the first name, last name, you can do that scenario context. You can use scenario context. But here, for login purpose, I'm going to use only two inputs. I need only two inputs. That is a username. I mean, that is email address and password. Okay. Now, let's go back to the registration step definition, and let's come here. Here, exactly. So now we need to add a scenario context. Add scenario context. So wherever you want to add to a variable, so there you have to use the scenario context. Wherever you want to get that, you have to use the dot get. Okay. So where I do one thing, just simply creating two variables. One is a string email address is equal to email. Okay. So whatever the value which is coming from the feature file, that I'm assigning here. Second variable, password, right, is equal to this one should be here, right? Sorry, this one should be here. So in this case, you can copy this. It's a simple string password is equal to, I'm creating the new variables, okay? New variables. Fine, let's come to this first one. How to set the value to the scenario context for email address. So for that, I'm going to use, you can also use that scenario context, but I'm using where scenario context is equal to, I mean, scenario context dot current. Okay, so in this current object, we are calling it. And then scenario context dot, this scenario context object dot, we have an add method. Use this, and inside this, we have a two arguments that you are getting from the add method. One is a key and the other one is a value. The key means, what is the key name you want to provide. Okay, I'm going to give the key as a email. Okay, this is my key. The same key you have to use other places. So here we can use the value, that is a email address. That's it. Okay, you can also use directly here. I mean, you can call this and you can paste here. That's not a problem. So let me remove this then. I just want to remove this. And you can simply call this here. Not a problem. And okay, we are adding here, right? We are adding here. And if you want to get in this particular one, So now if you want to get the values to this particular one, okay, example, I want to set this to send keys, okay. Anyway, we can call it from the send keys directly. For this, I'm directly calling here. So no need to get the scenario context here. It's not required, okay. It's not required for this. You can simply call from here. This email address, whatever I said here, right? So that's this one I'm going to call another places. So for this email address, setting this email address is not required for me. But if you want to set it, you can set it. So for the second one, so copy the same thing. Paste here. And this one I'm going to call as a password. You can call this pass. All right. And these two are enough for me because the confirm password is not required because it's going to be same. So no difference in that. So once you're done with the scenario context setting, so we didn't done with the setting the scenario context here because we have one more method that is called setter method, set scenario context. So from where it is coming from? Scenario context manager, right? Scenario context manager dot scenario context manager dot set scenario context of this scenario context. It is setting it. The same thing copy again, and here also same thing. Okay, so we are setting the scenario context. And after setting this, we want to get this value to somewhere else, right? So that is called login method. In the login method, I want to call this. So in this case, you can simply var scenario context is equal to scenario context manager same as this dot get scenario context. Simple. And after this, from the scenario context manager, we have to retrieve that value, right? So that is get method. Okay, get. But here we have to pass the data type. What is the data type? That is a string type. The string type. Inside this, we have to add the arguments. That is email. Same thing as same. Email is coming from where? This is the one. This is the one. Now come back to here. And this one I'm going to set to the a variable called as string email. It's fine. It is fine. And copy this and paste here. Simple. Fine. Second thing, string password is equal to scenario context dot, okay, get. This is also string, right? String. And here, password. That key we have to provide here. Which key? This key. This key. I'm sorry, this one. Okay. Come back. And this is the password. All right. So I'm done with the scenario context set. I'll explain you once again. Go to the registration step or definition. So here, where scenario context is called scenario context dot current. Okay, you can also write in one step. Okay, scenario context dot current dot add. You can also directly write that. No problem with that. So scenario context dot add method, email, your key and your value, which is coming from the feature file. And after that, we are setting the scenario context. And the second variable, second input, that is the password, same thing. Scenario where scenario context is equal to scenario context dot current and scenario context dot add password and your value coming from the feature file. And we are setting the scenario context. Both for use email address and password, we are setting the scenario context. Then come back to the login. Here I need that those two inputs. One is the email and password. If you want to get that inputs from other class to this class or this feature file, you have to get the scenario context. So where scenario context is equal to scenario context dot get scenario context. Okay. So if you want to get that value from the scenario context, string email is equal to this scenario context dot get keyword. Okay, this is a get key, a get method, and we are getting the string type variable that is called email. It is the key, and this one I'm setting here. Same thing for the password. Done. I'm done. Now I want to run both. Okay. Now I want to run both at a time. So clean it. So what I'll do, I'll just I'm going to give a tag name. We already learned tag, right? So I'm going to give tag name as a smoke. and registered. This is also small. But in the registration, I'm giving 0, 1. Okay. And the login, I'm giving 0, 2. 0, 2. All right. Now let me rebuild it once again. So this one I want to make it as a I mean category wise, or maybe tag wise, or we can say I'll go with the traits. It will give the tag wise. So remember, I did not pass any values to this login scenario in the feature file. So it should get automatically get from the scenario context. So where is that traits? Rebuild it. Yes, it's coming. So this is the first successful login, successful registration, then verify successful login. Right. So right click on this one, run it. Login. So it is entering the login. That is wrong actually. Click on the registration. So last name is missing. So something is wrong here. Maybe that what we can say property given wrong might be. So let me check that. Fine. Let me check that registration. Yes, I'm giving the wrong one. Okay. So lost name. And before that, the successful login second, it should execute second, right? So it is coming. Let me rerun once. This is completely wrong. It should not execute first. It is good. But login it not executing, right? So that is a problem. I'll do one thing. For the time being, I'm just changing order here. So I want to take this scenario, login scenario here. I'll just copy this. I'll just copy this here, registration, and paste here once. Okay. I'm just pasting here in the same feature file. Okay. Let me remove this two, one, this two. So within the same feature file, let me comment this first. Okay. Let me comment this, or else let me. This is commented. I'm just calling for the time being. I just want to show you that how the data is passing between the steps. So let me change this to 0. All right. Now let me run it once. So it is going to register data, rcutical02 at architectingtools.com, log out, and should log in. Oh, it's opening new browser. Fine. Login. It's perfect. It's working fine. All good. So now it's successfully working. Okay, there is some problem with the different feature files. So we'll fix that later. But the time being, it is good. So between the scenario, we are passing the test data. So this scenario to this scenario, we are passing the test data by using Scenario Context Manager at globally. So thank you for watching this video, guys. We'll see in the next session. And the code will be available in the GitHub. I'm going to push it.